The Supreme Court has delivered a landmark ruling that will reshape American trade policy and reverberate across the global economy. The case challenged tariffs imposed during the Trump administration, igniting trade wars and disrupting supply chains. After years of legal battles, the court has redefined the balance of power between the president and Congress on trade. The tariffs divided the nation. Supporters saw protection. Critics saw executive overreach. The court's decision offers a definitive legal interpretation. With fragile supply chains and rising inflation, the timing is critical. The Supreme Court's verdict is a turning point for U.S. trade policy, and the world is watching. To understand the Supreme Court's decision, let's revisit the laws behind the tariffs. Section 232 lets the president impose tariffs if imports threaten national security, used in 2018 for steel and aluminum. Section 301 empowers the U.S. Trade Representative to respond to unfair foreign trade practices, fueling the trade war with China. Tariffs on hundreds of billions in Chinese goods followed, shifting U.S. policy toward protectionism. Lawsuits quickly challenged the tariffs' legality. The Supreme Court's intervention was inevitable, and the stakes could not have been higher. The Supreme Court heard arguments from a coalition of steel importers, manufacturers, and business groups. Their case: the Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to regulate trade and impose tariffs. They argued Congress cannot delegate this core authority without clear limits, and that national security was defined too broadly. The government countered that Congress had legally delegated tariff authority through Section 232 and Section 301 with sufficient guidance. They insisted the President has broad discretion in national security matters, and that statutory procedures were followed. The justices pressed both sides. Could any president declare any import a national security threat? Where are the limits? The debate centered on the non-delegation doctrine, how much power Congress can hand to the executive. The court also questioned whether economic security is truly national security. The case became a test of constitutional boundaries and the future of presidential power in trade. The outcome would set a precedent for decades. The stakes were nothing less than the structure of American governance. On August 4, 2025, the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 decision that rewrote the rules of U.S. trade law. The majority found the executive branch overstepped its authority in applying Section 232. The court ruled that national security cannot be stretched to justify broad economic protectionism. Future Section 232 tariffs now require a clear, direct link to national defense, not just economic competition. The existing steel and aluminum tariffs were invalidated, but the law itself remains. The message sweeping protectionism must come from Congress, not the President. On Section 301, tariffs against China, the court sided with the executive, citing detailed statutory procedures that were followed. The China tariffs remain in place as a lawful exercise of delegated authority. This split decision creates a new, complex reality for U.S. trade policy. The majority included both conservative and liberal justices, emphasizing constitutional structure over politics. Dissenters warned the ruling could limit the president's ability to respond to emerging threats. The decision redefines the balance of power in trade and sets a new standard for future cases. The debate over executive authority is far from over. The economic impact of the Supreme Court's decision is immediate and far-reaching. Striking down Section 232 tariffs sent shockwaves through U.S. steel and aluminum producers, who now face renewed foreign competition. For years, these industries benefited from higher prices and increased production. Now, they must adapt to a more competitive market. For manufacturers using steel and aluminum, like automakers and appliance makers, the decision is a relief. Lower input costs could boost competitiveness and slow price increases for consumers. The Section 301 tariffs on China remain, affecting $370 billion in imports. Companies will continue diversifying supply chains away from China, accelerating trends like nearshoring to Mexico and Southeast Asia. The removal of metal tariffs may ease inflation in some sectors, but China tariffs keep broader price pressures alive. The Congressional Budget Office estimates these tariffs reduce U.S. GDP and raise costs for businesses and consumers. The U.S. economy now operates under a dual system: freer trade in metals, continued protectionism on Chinese goods. The decision brings clarity, but not universal relief. The effects will ripple through every corner of the economy. The new trade landscape is here to stay. The world watched the Supreme Court's ruling closely. U.S. allies targeted by Section 232 tariffs, like the EU, Canada, and Japan, welcomed the decision and began lifting retaliatory tariffs. This could ease years of trade tensions and reopen markets for American exports. For China, the outcome is mixed. The U.S. narrowed its use of national security, but kept the Section 301 tariffs in place. China is likely to maintain its own retaliatory tariffs, especially on U.S. agriculture. The ruling narrows the national security loophole, aligning U.S. practice more closely with global norms. But the continued China tariffs keep Washington at odds with the World Trade Organization. Developing nations see opportunity as companies diversify supply chains away from China. Countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico could benefit from new investment. The global trading system remains fragmented and uncertain. The ruling clarifies some rules, but the world economy is still in flux. The next moves by the U.S. and its partners will shape the future of global trade. The Supreme Court's split decision creates clear winners and losers. Winners: U.S. industries that rely on imported steel and aluminum, like automakers and construction, will see lower costs and greater competitiveness. Losers: domestic steel and aluminum producers, who lose tariff protection and face tougher global competition. Companies importing from China get no relief. Section 301 tariffs remain, keeping costs high for retailers and manufacturers. The decision locks in a new status quo, forcing businesses to adapt supply chains and pricing strategies. U.S. farmers may regain access to European markets as retaliatory tariffs are lifted. But Chinese tariffs on U.S. agriculture are likely to stay, leaving farmers in a precarious position. The ruling's impact is uneven. Some sectors gain, others lose. The business landscape is permanently altered. Adaptation and innovation will be key for survival. The trade war's legacy is here to stay. For American consumers, the Supreme Court's decision will be felt at the checkout. Products made with steel and aluminum, like cars and appliances, may see modest price drops as tariffs are lifted. But don't expect sweeping savings. Section 301 tariffs on Chinese goods remain, keeping prices high on electronics, clothing, and home goods. Studies show these tariffs are paid by U.S. importers and passed on to consumers. The ruling may help slow inflation in some sectors, but won't solve the broader problem. The result is a two-tiered system: cheaper U.S.-made goods, but continued high prices for many imports. The Federal Reserve's fight against inflation continues, with trade policy now a key variable. The decision brings clarity, but not universal relief for families. Your next car might be cheaper, but your next TV or sneakers probably won't be. The ruling underscores how global trade battles hit home. Every American household is affected by these high-stakes decisions. The price you pay is shaped by law, politics, and global competition. The Supreme Court's decision is a turning point for U.S. trade policy. By limiting the president's use of national security for broad tariffs, the court reasserts congressional authority and may help mend ties with allies. But upholding the China tariffs cements a new era of strategic competition. The outcome is a complex, two-track system: relief for some industries, continued pressure for others. Consumers get clarity, but not sweeping price cuts. The ruling is neither a win for free traders nor protectionists. It's a new middle ground. Congress now holds more power to shape trade, but faces the challenge of forging a coherent strategy. The legal uncertainty is over, but the policy debate is just beginning. The future of U.S. trade will depend on whether Congress can act in a divided, competitive world. The next chapter is unwritten, and the stakes have never been higher.